Good day. Welcome back to my neck of the woods, where I talk about my opinions, my experiences, and any knowledge that I've gained, and I try to share it with folks out there, and hopefully they can learn something or pick something up from my own mistakes or adventures or experiences. All right. So today I'm going to talk about what's the best hunting advice. So I'm going to talk about the best hunting advice that has been given to me over the years. All right. Before I get started, if you would subscribe to my page, like any of my videos, and make comments. I love comments. I love comments, good or bad. I enjoy criticism, actually. That's really how I learn. So anyway, let's get to it. And I have like a top 10. I numbered them, so I'm going to read them off a piece of paper here, and I'll elaborate on most of them. Okay? First one off is safety. I think that's one of the best recommendations that I got out there is make sure if you're in a tree stand, you wear your harness and you use the appropriate sort of safety procedures or put things in place to keep you safe. I personally think that the rope with the Prizik knot, so you're never not tied into the tree or the rope. So if you don't know how it works, you tie it. That's the only time that you're not tied into it is when you tie it on the tree. You loop it on the tree, and you put the Prizik knot will run all the way down to the bottom. So when you're climbing your tree stand, if in the dark, or if it's cold, or if it's ice, or whatever it is, you're tied in and you're safe. It does hold you. I'm 230 pounds, and 2 years ago I fell out of my stand and it caught me. Now, if you've ever been hanging from a harness, that itself is not comfortable. But the Prizik knot caught me, and I was able to grab my stand and get back to it. So safety. Put some safety measures in place. If you can't afford the lineman belt with the Prizik knot, you can make them. It's very easy to make. Or at the very least, just have a tie-in at the top of the tree where you clip into the top of the tree. And if you have a ladder stand, most ladder stands, they're not going to pull away. All right, so safety. I think safety is number one. All right. Second, I'm a bow hunter, and I think knowing your limitations. And it took me a little while to realize what my limitations were and how much we actually owe it to the animal to take what we consider an ethical shot. I really don't think there's a lot of ethics in killing an animal, but I do think that we should be responsible enough to know our limitations and take the higher percentage shots. I practice out to 50 and 60 yards, but I won't shoot beyond 40. And sometimes even past 35 is pushing it for me personally. I mean, I passed on a shot that was 38 yards, but just where the terrain was, and it dipped down, and all I really saw was the deer's back. So you have to know your limitations and learn from them. We all learn from there. I mean, when I first started, I took shots that were well past my limitations, and I've learned from them. So and someone's given me that advice, and I took it to heart. All right. Thirdly, movement. Movement in the stand. Now, this was a huge factor for me. My first 3 years of hunting, I saw some deer, but they just weren't close enough, or I didn't move. I think I moved too much. So a gentleman, I call him an old timer. He says, "Well, what do you do in the stand?" I was frustrated because I was seeing deer, but they just weren't close enough to shoot. And one of the old timers at my sportsman's club, he said, "Well, do you move in your stand?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I eat lunch, and I sit dark to dark." And he says, "Well, don't move." He says when you're in your stand and you see a squirrel, 20, 30 yards away, you can pick it up quick, right? And I'm like, "Well, yeah." He says, "Well, a deer can pick you up quick if you move. It's the same thing, just from the other direction." So movement is key. And when I stopped moving in the stand, when I just stayed still, I had squirrels on my stand with me. I had birds land on my arrow or land directly on my feet. So the movement plays a lot. And if it's cold out and you're having trouble staying still, then you need to get out of the stand. Or if you have another stand where the wind or your scent is still good, take a walk. Take a walk and walk to another stand and warm up a little bit. That's helpful too. I've done that. There were days where I was just so cold or my feet were cold, and I got out of my stand and I walked to another stand, which was probably like a 15-minute walk. And by the time I got to that stand, I was warmer. I wasn't sweating or anything, but I was warmer, and I ended up shooting a deer that day. I was there for, I don't know, I probably got out of my other stand probably like 8:30, got to my other one at 8:45, got up and shot a deer at 9:30, quarter of 10, I believe it was. So movement is key. Fourth off, I think this is very, very important, is to have some sort of a mentor, someone that is excellent at hunting or is way better at it than you, where you can ask questions. Like I said, my first 3 years of hunting, I had a buddy who had been hunting a year or so before me, and we were just kind of learning as we go and making mistakes, but no one was really telling us what we need to do or what we're doing wrong. So what I did is I went down to my local sportsman's club where I was a member, and I asked some of the guys that have been hunting all their lives. And like one gave me the suggestion about movement, and one of them, I actually took him into the woods with me, showed him my setups, and I learned so much that day. So much for anything from tracking to looking for sign and having movement, and it was a blessing. My learning curve was much shorter after that day. I was just able to pick up on things little things that mean a lot. All right, so get a mentor, get someone who's better at it than you, and ask them questions. Now it could be as far as someone on YouTube that you can just ask questions to. All right, I'm always available for questions, but I'm no expert by any means, but I can give people advice. All right, so chime in if you have any questions about that, and I'll help any way I can. Number 5, sit as long as you can. Stay in your stand as long as you can, and prepare for the weather. There's that old saying, you can't kill deer from your couch. Well, how am I trying to say this? So, if you're asking a friend or something, well, it's really windy out today, maybe I shouldn't go in. Yes, you should go in. You should. And if it's too maybe dangerous to sit in a stand, sit on the ground. Every day you're in there, there's a better percentage that you're going to get a deer, especially if you're a beginner. If you're more seasoned, you know when you need to be in there and you know when you don't need to be in there. And obviously you don't want to burn out one area, so you want to have multiple areas, but sit as long as you can. And if you can't stay still in your stand, you need to leave. That goes back to the movement one, but there's so many people that say, well, it's raining, I'm not going to go in. If you have the day off from work, go in. Sit for a couple hours, and you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many deer show up in the rain. And then people make excuses. Well, I can't track blood in the rain. Well, you can track blood in the rain, but you just got to make sure it's a short trail. Follow the movement of the deer after you shoot it, and work on your shot placement, and it goes back to knowing your limitations also. All right, that's number 5. Number 6, have a good knife. A good knife for field dressing. When you do get a deer, I had this monstrosity of a thing with a gut hook, and it was really pretty and it looked great, and I spent a lot of money on it, but it was useless for skinning a deer. The gut hooks work, but I found one that just, it fits right in my finger. But when you're blindly putting your hand up inside of a deer, you want something that you can really control with your finger, and you want something really, really sharp, and you want something that holds an edge. Because once you cut into a deer, cut through that hide, you'd be surprised at how fast that dulls that blade. So then you need to sharpen it up. And there's a lot of knives out there that once they lose their edge, they're not going to get back to where they need to be. So find one. A lot of people are using those Havalons, the razors. I personally don't. I use a small knife. It's about an inch long. Has a wide curved blade, and it's made by Elk Ridge. I think I paid $10 for it, but it really holds an edge. So, a sharp knife for that. Number 7, scout your areas. Know your areas. Go in the off season and learn. Start with the basics. Start with like scat and tracks and rubs, scrapes, and gain intel from the year before. So say you were, it was rut time and they were here during the rut. Well, look around, see if there was some scrapes there, see if there was some rubs there, see if there was a reason as to why they were there during the rut. A lot of times there is. A lot of times you'll find that, and then the next year, if there's still a good amount of does in that area, those does will go into heat or estrus, so to speak, around the same time. So a lot of those bucks, if they're still alive, if they didn't get hit by cars or get harvested, they'll still be there after those same does. So you got to check out that. Check out the sign and move around in your areas and take chances too, especially when you're like you. And I'm a fan of cameras, so get a camera and put it up anywhere. You see a pile of scat on the ground, put a camera up next to it. Maybe you get something, maybe you don't. But don't falsely pattern deer. There's a lot of people that put food down and then put a camera there and say, well, the deer are there. They're not. They're coming in to get the food. So try to pattern deer based on your scouting. I think that's a great tip. Someone told me that one time. When I first started, I would put out bags and bags and bags of corn. And then in Massachusetts, you can't bait during season. And then the corn was all dried up, and then I'm like, well, where are the deer? They were here every day. Well, they were here getting the free food that I was feeding them. That's what they were doing. They were freeloading on the free food, and they probably came from miles just from by piles and piles of corn that I was leaving out. So scout your areas, know your areas, and don't falsely put up cameras or falsely think you're patterning deer by putting food. That's a good one. Number 8. Dressed success. And what I mean by that is you have different sets of clothes or different layers of clothes that you wear. My theory is I'll always dress too warm. I can always take something off. Or when you're walking to your stand, you don't want to wear too much and sweat a lot on your way in. So I have like an early season setup, a mid-season setup, and a late season setup, all based on being comfortable in the stand. Early season, you might be too hot. Late season, you might be too cold. So you're not going to be too hot late season. It usually doesn't happen, unless it's a mild day that day. But you want to dress appropriately, and you always want to be on the warmer side. You can always take something off. There's a lot of people that bring stuff in, but I find that it's harder to warm up than it is to cool down. Right, especially when sweating's involved and scent is involved. So work on that and try to. I always try to get like 3 outfits, for each, or what you're going to layer underneath or whatnot. All right, I have 2 jackets anyway. I have an early season jacket that I'll layer up underneath for mid season, and then I have a late season jacket. Same thing with pants. All right, number 9. Is your exit and entrance routes. What you need to do is you need to make sure that they're silent. You need to go in beforehand, before season starts. Sometimes I do it in the summertime, and I will figure out how I'm going to get to that area. And I try to, if I can do it downwind, I try to make it a straight shot. Straight line is the shortest distance. You don't want to be zigzagging all over the woods waiting for deer to pick you up. Sometimes you have to. Depending on the wind and how you're walking in. But I go in and short of sweeping the earth floor there, the forest floor, I go in and I remove all the sticks and I put them to the side. And when I go in, I'm not crunching on anything. And I walk slow too. Prepare to walk slow into your stand and try not to make any noise. And I try not to use a light, even though it is dark. Sometimes I'll have, I don't want to use that big headlamp. I think that deer know that headlamps don't belong in the middle of the woods somewhere. So I'll take a flashlight and I'll cup it with my hand. And if I need a little more light, then I'll let it out. I sort of use it as like a governor. And other times I'll just put it right in front of me, and I let my eyes adjust, and I walk very slow, and I try to get in there. Sometimes I go in at first light when it's not even dark anymore, depending on the stand and depending on where it's located. You know, if it's located near bedding, I'll probably want to get in there in the dark and try to sneak in there. But if it's not, if it's in a transition point or around food or something like that, and I know that a lot of times they don't show up till like 8 o'clock, I'll be in there at first light. It depends on, and you got to know your woods, so do your scouting and figure it out from there, but you don't always need to be in an hour before first light or whatever the sort of rule is, you know. Each spot is unique. And everyone's woods is unique too. All right, and number 10 and the final one is scent control. Learn about scent control. It doesn't always apply to everywhere that you're hunting, but learning it will never hurt you. It will never hurt you at all. Where I hunt, it's in the suburbs, and a lot of the deer, they're really used to people on walking trails and the scent of people. But going in scent-free and really learning about how to cover your scent and having a ritual. I mean, my ritual, you know, I get up in the morning, if it's a morning hunt or whatever, I'll get up in the morning and I'll shower with scent-free soap, and I will put on my clothes that are in bags or scent-free. I use Scent Lock too. And you know, you got to keep Scent Lock. You can't wash it. You know, you can only dry it, and you got to keep it in a good tote so it's not absorbing the activated carbon, so it's not absorbing more odors. But learn, ask people about it. Learn, watch YouTube videos. That's what I do anyway, and learn about scent control. It's a very, very important factor in deer hunting. Like I said, it doesn't apply to everyone all the time, but by learning it and utilizing it, it will never ever hurt you. Ultimately, you want to smell like nothing going in, as opposed to smelling like something, as opposed to smelling like earth, or apples, or vanilla, or all these other cover scents. In my opinion, you want to smell like nothing. You don't want to smell like a human being, and if you smell like nothing, then nothing is foreign. All right? This video was much longer than I wanted it to be, but hopefully you get some good points, and hopefully I can help you out. Put something in the comments. If you have questions, I'll answer them as best I can. I'm no expert by any means, but I have learned some things over the years, and I feel like my learning curve gets shorter the more time I spend in the woods. All right? Subscribe to my channel, like my videos, share it with your friends, and make comments. I really, really enjoy comments. I love people telling me what they think, and a lot of times it gives me a idea for my next video too. All right? Be well.